Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Short Round Podcast. I'm your host, Pro Rodeo Canada Insider, and the Pro Rodeo Canada social media manager, Wacey Anderson. I am so fired up to share this new project with all of you. The Short Round is fixing to be your one-stop shop for everything you need to know what's going on with Pro Rodeo Canada. We'll have results, event wrap-ups, updates, news, interviews with those contestants and those involved with Pro Rodeo Canada events throughout the year. It's fixing to be a cool thing that we're going to do throughout the rest of this year and into 2024. So I cannot wait to keep on sharing this with you all. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road and get you all caught up on what's been happening around Pro Rodeo Canada. So CFR 49 just wrapped up. It was an insane week in Red Deer. In my opinion, like one of the best CFRs to date. There was record crowds. There's amazing storylines, drama, everything you could want in the finals rodeo happened in Red Deer that week. And I don't know. It's hard to sum it up into one word. So let's take a look back and see what happened in Red Deer a few weeks ago. So, like I said before, we broke attendance records all week, all the way through Wednesday to Championship Sunday. Huge crowds, really awesome action, really engaged. I thought it was definitely one of the best crowds we have seen at a CFRs in past years. So, man, it was awesome. So, and also Friday night, the team roping, probably the best round of team roping we've ever seen in a CFR. Early on in the round, T. McLeod and Brady Chapel tied the CFR arena record with 3.7 seconds. And then just a few teams later, Calgary Schmidt, Brady Tryon broke that record with 3.5 seconds. And to make it even better, Ren Richard, Jeremy Bueller ended up tying that same record shortly after with another 3.5 second run. So that turned out to be an epic round of team roping, if you ask me. Some other stuff to make note of: Zeke Thurston bucked off in the first round of competition at CFR 49, which kind of left the whole crowd, anybody involved, people on the back of the chutes, they were silent. It was crazy. Probably the last thing anybody expected, but one thing we all know is you can never count Zeke out. He went on to win 3 rounds, get himself back in the mix, and eventually take home his 4th Canadian title. Bravo, Zeke. And finally, one of my favorite highlights from the past CFR would have been Taylor Manning winning her 3 rounds in a row in the barrel racing. She kind of came in a few spots back at that top spot of the leaderboard and shot the lights out, winning 3 rounds in a row throughout the weekend and got herself back into the mix. Unfortunately, got herself out of the average after knocking a few barrels. So she was unable to capture that Canadian title, but heck of an effort on her end, and we were stoked to see it. So awesome action from CFR 49. And just to recap and get you all caught up on the winners in case you missed it. So in the barrel racing, we had Lynette Broadway. She came in the season leader, walked out her CFR Red Deer as the winner. Congratulations on her first Canadian title. In the bareback riding, Clint Lay comes back with a storm to capture his 2nd Canadian title. Congratulations, Clint. Awesome to see you back and competing at your best. So looking for big things out of him in 2024. In the steer wrestling, Scott Gunther, the guy who didn't want to rodeo that much, rodeoed enough to get his 4th Canadian title, and it was awesome to see. Scott's an absolute killer. You put him in those situations, back him into a box, for lack of a better term, he's going to come out swinging and put his best foot forward. So super stoked for Scott, one of the good guys of the game. So congratulations, and we'll see what he has left in the tank here in 2024. In the team roping, I mentioned these fellows earlier: Brady Tryon, Calgary Smith. Man, these guys were so fun to watch at the CFR. Roped with a lot of emotion, shot the lights out every night, and really pushed the pace in the team roping. Like we said before, they broke the CFR arena record. Ended up tying with Ren Richard and Jeremy Bueller. So super stoked for those guys. It was fun to watch them take home the aggregate title and the Canadian title at their first CFRs. So again, more guys to watch out for as we move forward here into 2024. Another guy I was talking about earlier, the Zeke Thurston, the King of the North, the undisputed king of Canadian bronc riding. I think safe to say now, Zeke capturing his 4th Canadian title in Red Deer. That buck off, like I said before, kind of had us all speechless, but you can never count the guy out. If he's in the draw, he's always in the mix to win, and he smashed out 3 round wins in a row, placed really deep in the other rounds, and just was a force to be reckoned with in Red Deer. So once again, hats off to Zeke for taking home his 4th Canadian title. In the tie down roping, excuse me, Haven Medjid sealing the deal for his first Canadian title. It was a second CFR, and it was kind of talked about throughout the week how he was really, really wanting to push for that first ever Canadian title, and he showed why he's one of the best in the world, best tie down ropers in the world, and the former world champion, putting together some great runs. And yeah, it was good to see Haven take home that title. So congratulations. In the bull riding, Edgar Durazo picking up his second Canadian title in as many years after a 5-for-6 performance. And I mean, put on a clinic in the bull riding. Bulls into his hand, away from his hand. You could hardly throw him off except for that one round. But I mean, Edgar, well deserved. Another one of the good guys of the sport. I was really happy to see how much he cares and really, really wants to win and is grateful for the success that he's had. So again, hats off to Edgar. In the breakaway roping, Shea Beaver picks up her first Canadian title in the breakaway roping. She had a great week. They only did 3 runs in Red Deer the last 3 rounds, and she came guns a-blazing and walked out of Red Deer as the champion. So congratulations, Shea. And into the novice and steer riding, Hayden Mulvey is your steer riding champion. The novice bareback riding, you got Chase Siemens, and the novice saddle bronc, Jarrett Cooper. The novice events are so great that we're able to have those as a part of the CFR. There's some really, really great young talent coming up. There's some huge rides in the cow riding, or the steer riding, I should say. And man, it was fun to watch these guys battle it out throughout the week for these titles. So congratulations to all of our novice champions. And finally, our all-around champion, Logan Spady, and our Kenny McLean Award winner, Kyle Wanchuk, round out your champions from CFR Red Deer. If you want to look back on any of the results or news releases, you can head to the Pro Rodeo Canada website, where our Director of Communications, Barb Paulson, has everything you need to know from the past CFR. And if you want to just look back on some of the rounds and results and anything you need there. So congratulations to all the winter. Congratulations to all the winners. It was an awesome week in Red Deer, and I can't wait to do it again here at CFR 50. And before we move into CFR 50, I just want to send one last thank you out to the crew at Westerner Park and CFR Red Deer. They were unbelievable partners for the CFR over the past 6 years, and Red Deer was a great host to us, and they truly set the bar for what the CFR should be. And I think this past year was a good example of that. It was high energy, good crowds, good entertainment, good competition. And I think that's going to be good to have as we move into more and more CFRs. So moving into some new business, the CFR is returning to Edmonton, in case you missed that news, from October 2nd to 5th, 2024 for CFR Red Deer. So just want to send a huge congratulations out to the CFR Edmonton team. It's going to be awesome to be back in the City of Champions 2024 for the CFR and the 50th CFR. So it'll be great. We'll get into more of this as we move forward here in new episodes into the new year. So coming up, we got the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals, which run November 22nd to 25th in Regina during Canadian Western Exhibition. And I'll be joined later in the show with my pal, professional rodeo announcer Robert Schmidt, to give you guys an in-depth preview of the finals and what to expect as we get into Regina next week. But before that, I want to throw it to this week's interview with the Cowboy Channel's on-air personality and proud Canadian, Katy Lucas. It was a great chat, so enjoy. All right, welcome back to the short round, where we are joined by our first ever guest, the one and only Katy Lucas. Katy, thank you for joining us, the first ever CPRA podcast episode. How's it going today?
Hey, it's going good. I'm really excited, and I'm feeling pretty honored to get to be the first guest. That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh, when I was coming up with kind of the structure of the show, I mean, you were the perfect person. We had just spent pretty much a week working together at the CFR. You're working with the Cowboy Channel, so you'll be able to kind of help us tee up what's coming at the NFR. And I think I want to go in and get into and like sharing your story, your career, and for those who may not know you or kind of been wondering how you've ended up where you are today, I really want to kind of cover all those bases. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation. And speaking of that, let's get into that. Your career. How did you get your start? Where did you find the passion for being behind the camera and broadcasting, especially in the sport of rodeo, where, I mean, it's not a common thing where people are like, hey, I want to be a rodeo broadcaster.
Yeah, it was definitely something I was really passionate about kind of at the start of high school. I started writing for Barb Paulson with the Canadian Pro Rodeo News back then, and I always really liked writing. Love Dave and Barb Paulson. I've known them for a very long time now. We actually joke they actually tutored my brother and I when we were in Arizona in the wintertime. So I had a great relationship with them, and Barb was kind enough to let me have some columns in the Canadian Pro Rodeo News. And so got my start in the journalism field there, and always really enjoyed writing. And it's something I still dabble in every once in a while to this day. And then I was in love with Jennifer Schmidt now. And she's the one that inspired me to first be a rodeo queen. And then when I saw her as a rodeo broadcaster and saw that could be a job. And at the time, maybe it wasn't a full-time job, but it really inspired me to want to follow in those footsteps. So I knew, though, that I wanted the structure of a professional broadcaster. So I went to Lethbridge College for communication arts and specialized in broadcasting because I wanted to know the detail side of it. I knew the rodeo side of it, and it's kind of a stats junkie and love learning about all the rules, all the events. It's hard for me to pick a favorite event because I truly do love all of them. But I wanted to have the other side of it to kind of add some professionalism to what I was doing. So went to school for broadcasting, and from there got to work on a show called The Road to the CFR. Shout out to Rangeland Media for that. They were so good to give this young gal straight out of college a shot. And I'd actually freelanced for them this summer that I was kind of in the middle of my 2-year education in school. So knew the guys, and they were wonderful to work with, and they were really wonderful to kind of give me some on-the-job training as we started out doing a series where, I was working with Dave Paulson then and Doug Young, and we went to, I think it was 6 rodeos throughout the summer. Of course, the Ponoka Stampede, Medicine Hat, Innisfail, and among a few others where we got to go and broadcast either the final day or the short rounds of those rodeos. And it was kind of cool to think, because that was back in 2013. And we were live streaming back then.
That's a big deal.
I was. And
yeah,
I think about like all the calls we get now about like, oh, this speed is cutting out. My internet's not working. My internet's not fast enough. And to think about it back in 2013, how tough it was.
Yeah.
So that was really cool and really helped me get my start. And that was the first time that I got to do the interviews at the Canadian finals too. So all the way back in 2013. And from there, it was just a lot of work, a lot of hustling, doing whatever job was available. It didn't matter if it was writing, shooting video, editing video, doing the interviews. I did it all. And that's kind of what it takes really in the broadcast industry. You can't be too good for anything. You have to be willing to jump in and do whatever job's available. And so for anyone out there that, wants to get into this field, there's no job too small. You're not above any job. Jeff Metters, he's a prime example. He's the king when it comes to rodeo broadcasting. He just not too long ago picked up a camera and shot horsemanship for the Miss Rodeo America pageant because they were down a shooter and they needed one more. So he just grabbed a camera and did it. And so I feel like there's a lot of young broadcasters out there that are just thinking like, oh, I just want to be on
a one-trick pony type job,
yeah.
which is not. There's like, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. It's like, it takes all these different things you need to be able to do, or else you're not going to be successful.
I agree. And I think too, it makes you so much better once you do get to specialize, because yes, I'm on air 99% of the time now, and that's my focus and that's what I do. But I can communicate with an editor. I can communicate with a shooter. I can work well with a producer because I have had to do all of that. So, and that's what made me the person that I am today and the broadcaster that I am today. So highly recommend it. I worked a couple very busy years for Flow Sports, running the Flow Rodeo. I was a content editor for Flow. And I mean, that saw me running around like a madwoman doing it all. I'm sure you remember seeing me, rushing by because I would shoot highlights, I would shoot the interviews, I would edit them, I would write the stories, post them to the website. So, truly no job was too small. And for 2 years, I probably did 700 plus pieces of content for them. I remember one year for the American, I did over 200 pieces just
Wow.
for the American. So
That's crazy.
yeah, and I'm so thankful for that experience. I feel like I'm still recovering, still
Yeah.
take naps from it, but
Oh gosh. Yeah.
and that eventually led me to the Cowboy Channel, and here we are.
Well, and I kind of want to go back to 2013 where like you mentioned, like live streaming events was like a crazy thing, whereas now we kind of think of it as the norm, right? So how were you cutting your teeth outside of the road to the CFR, or like getting that practice, getting those reps in, like you say, because that's such an important thing in anything you do, whether it's competing or working in media, working in anything, you got to get those hours in, which I think, again, going back to some other stuff we were just talking about, it's often overlooked. It's just like we kind of just try to specialize on one thing and not kind of understand the why of why everything's done the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. I've always had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. Like I said, I was writing for Canadian Pro Rodeo News, and that really teaches you structure of how a story comes together. And it's the same. There's little differences when you switch it over to broadcast, but so much of that structure remains the same. So that was really helpful. For Road to the CFR too, I was doing their social media, which, it would probably be awful compared to today's standards, but I got to do, behind the scenes posts and do little video clips. And so it was really beneficial too to maybe think about like, okay, what is a good story? What is resonating with people online? Oh, they really like this post about the bull that I got before the rodeo. Maybe we should do more stories like that. So I think it was just a lot of on the job training, a lot of figuring it out as you go, but also just being willing to do everything all kind of came together to give me those reps. Because back then, as you know, there wasn't a lot of opportunities, especially in Canada.
Yeah, it's small, and even so, like it's still pretty small as it is, but there's getting to be more and more of that stuff. But yeah, it's back then it was like social media, all of the stuff, how we cover a lot of rodeo that didn't even exist now. Like you've been looking at like what Feature Productions does on the like the content side. Like it's crazy how much it's grown in the past, I guess, 10 years now since then.
Oh yeah, it's huge, huge now. And that was my biggest reason for having to look to the States to eventually make a full-time career of it. As you know, in Canada, our season only spans half the year. And so it's kind of hard to carve out a full-time place for yourself there. And I'm so thankful though to see how much it's grown. Like your position, it didn't even exist a few years ago. And so
exactly.
It's so good for rodeo.
Well, and then I want to get into going into the US and the Cowboy Channel stuff. And did you find it hard? Because obviously you had all this experience and you've done all these cool things in Canada, but now you have to take it to a whole, like almost the mega market of rodeo where they've been covering it like crazy for years and years and years. So did you find it hard to kind of break into that, or were you able to make connections over the years with your work in Canada, or talk about getting your foot in the door there? Because I think that's an interesting thing in itself.
It was definitely intimidating, that's for sure. The great thing that was so beneficial for me was honestly my connections with my dad, because he rodeoed so much in the US. That was helpful. And there's a lot of people out there that kind of have a misconception. They think that you have to have an in, or so-and-so only got there because of who their dad was or whatever. And I've been, I don't want to say victim, that's dramatic, but there's been people out there that, will say to someone like me, oh, you just won a rodeo queen contest because of your dad. And I always joke that I won it in spite of my dad. I am my father's daughter, and I had to, really, cleaned it up, or not cleaned it up. He's not rough and tough or anything like that, but he's certainly not a rodeo queen. And so I think that my dad opened a lot of doors for me. I remember when I first worked for Flow Sports, and I introduced myself to Sherry Servey. And of course I said, I'm Katy Lucas. And we were talking for a little while, and then she says, wait a minute, is your dad Joe? And from then on, if I call Sherry Servey, she's willing to pick up the phone and book interviews. So, but I also think at the same time, so many people could hear that and think like, oh, that's the only reason you could get to where you are. But I think that everybody out there, doesn't matter who you are, you have innate advantages, you have connections that is different from everyone else. But then it's your job to nourish those connections and to really
exactly
prove yourself within that role. People don't just stick around because they have that connection.
No.
They maybe meet you, they're maybe willing to shake your hand for the first time because of that connection, but then you have to make sure that door stays open and prove yourself in that space. So I feel like for a lot of people that has been helpful for me to get in the door and started it, but then it was up to me to go ahead and nourish those connections and expand on them. And it's been a really cool journey. I thought I was good at my job before, and then I got into the big ocean here in the States, and it was very intimidating. I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome a lot. But also it made me work a lot harder. I feel like I'd kind of hit a plateau, and coming down here and being amongst the best in the business has made me push so much harder and to see how much further I want to go too. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And so, the door was open, but then it was up to me to bust my butt and make sure that I actually rose to the challenge, because it was a huge challenge. I had to make all these connections with the stock contractors, the rodeo committees, some contestants that, maybe I'd never met before. And so it's been a really cool journey and very eye-opening, because I look back to old CFR broadcasts that I put together, or, old stories that I'm like, oh gosh, I have really come a long ways.
Well, it's even that's a time when the media side of rodeo is new to a lot of people. So like contestants maybe were a little bit apprehensive or like didn't really want to be involved. And then plus like being a woman in like a mostly male dominant sport, it's a whole other thing. And I think, it just would have been such a crazy time to try and get kind of what you needed out of it and build you up that ladder. It's crazy. I think there's really something to be said on the side of it's kind of your job to foster those relationships when the doors open. Like that's, like I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like you can have the door open for you, but you got to put in the work to deal with it. Like even for me, it's been the same thing. I've had a lot of doors open for me within rodeo and in life, and I've really made a point to like make an effort to foster those relationships, because like you said, it's easy for them to say hi, hello, but for them to really to value who you are and see who you are, you got to put in that work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's kind of a misconception and kind of an excuse that people make of, oh, so-and-so got the job instead of me because of this, because they had this advantage. And it's like, no, we all have to work hard no matter how many advantages we have. And so I think it's pretty cool to see people, like yourself too, that, yeah, sure, you had some doors open, but so does everybody. Yeah. And it's up to you to step in.
So when you first started working in the US, you mentioned you realized you needed to work on some things. What were those things that you noticed where you were lacking, you needed to put a little bit more work into?
I think there are things that I still work on to this day. I think Jeff Metters is the king of being concise. And whereas I jump in and I'm like, I'm so excited and I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that and I want to talk about this. And that's something that I still struggle with to this day. And Jeff, he will say something in 5 words and still get as strong or even stronger of a point across as I can say sometimes in 50 words. And so I think about like, okay, channel your inner Jeff Metters here, because he's just the king at that. And so that's something that I certainly learned how to work on is edit yourself a little bit. And I think is something that I've struggled with, my entire life, because this does not come naturally to me, is just being more natural, showing more personality. And that's something that, whether it was a queen contest, a public speech, or broadcasting, everybody has always told me like, relax, have fun with it, all of this. And I think like,
trying.
Have fun. So that's something that I've really, really worked on. And I've found it is so much more fun. It's so much easier just to be yourself, but it's definitely something that I do struggle with. And so those would be the two major things for me: edit myself and just have fun with it. Just be me. And that's, I'm so lucky for wonderful coworkers. I always thank Ty McClary, because Ty is just Ty. And it brings out sincerity in you, because he's just up there talking, and what you see on TV is the exact human being that he is off screen too. And when he gets up there and he's just having a conversation with you, it helps me be more conversational too. So I really learned from a lot of my coworkers in that sense of, like, and Ty especially, he is not putting on a show. He is just up there chatting about the thing that he loves, and it helps bring that out in me. So I've definitely learned a lot from my coworkers.
Well, and I want to get into the Cowboy Channel stuff with just how much the game has changed with having the Cowboy Channel in the mix, like having with the CFR broadcast this year and all the rodeos, even all the Canadian rodeos. Like, that's been a huge game changer and exposure for them. And then you bring in everything they do in the US market. Like, how has that changed it for you as a broadcaster and then as a fan for the sport?
Well, for me personally, it gave me a career. I went to college for broadcasting, just hoping that something like this would exist someday. It didn't. Cowboy Channel's only been around for a few years now, and I went to school 12 years ago. And so for me, on a personal level, it gave me an entire career that I could make a living doing what I always dreamed I could do. And as far as the rodeo side of things, how cool is it that you and I get to be in this kind of renaissance of rodeo? Because as we know from being in it, our whole lives, it was stagnant for a long time. It was trucking along. It was doing just fine, but it wasn't going anywhere. And this year, and I'm sure you saw the same thing, every single rodeo that I went to, record crowds, even just on the grounds, record souvenir sales, beer sales, all of that.
Yeah.
And then for you on your end, I'm sure you're seeing amazing numbers on social media, and things are
competition is better than it's ever been. Like, that's that's one thing I found, like, across the board, every event, like, you're seeing fast runs, high scores, like, everything's happening all the time.
And there's so many more competitors too. You think about, back in my dad's day or even earlier, you'd have your handful of guys that those were your standouts. Those are the ones that are going to win the world titles. And now it's like any of those top 15 at the NFR, they could win a world title. And then there's 20 more in most events that could be in that category too. And, just the horsepower and what we're seeing in horse sales and futurities. And it's such a cool time to be involved in rodeo. And so to have the Cowboy Channel kind of be involved in just some small way, be a part of that, it's so cool. It's such an honor to be a part of.
Well, and you guys recently just won an award for your 100 rodeos in 100 days broadcast thing. I don't know what the proper word for it is. Excuse me for that. But that's a cool thing to kind of like finally see the culmination of that work recognized kind of at a higher level outside of the sport.
Yeah, it's actually gotten a couple different awards this year, and it's been really cool. We got to go to New York for the Synopsis event, and it was very cool. We were definitely the only ones with cowboy hats on in the room. But just to be recognized like that is really cool. And I know when the idea came about 3 years ago, it was like, oh no, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this happen? We're a small but mighty crew already, and now we've got to put on 100 rodeos in 100 days. And we blew it out of the water. And then this year, I can't remember the exact number. It was like 140 rodeos or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's that was really cool, and it kind of helped, I think, give it an identity too, to kind of pull all of these rodeos together. Because as you know, there's huge ones that we're broadcasting, but then we're also bringing to light some of the smaller rodeos too. So to me, it kind of gave it a sense of community and identity throughout the whole season when we're counting them all up. And so it was a lot of work, that's for sure. And I certainly don't do most of it. There's, our crew, they spend a lot of late nights in the studio, sometimes broadcasting rodeos till 1, 2 in the morning, just to bring more rodeos to light. And so there's a lot of us that certainly deserve a lot of credit for putting that together.
Well, and then a quick shout out to Carly Peterson. I know she was recognized for her work on all that, and I got to work with her in Red Deer for the first time, and like it was awesome. Like the Cowboy Channel crew, you guys set the gold standard for what it means to work to do this thing, and we'll get into more of that once we get to the CFR side of things. But one thing I wanted to talk about was the working a live event or working an event like the CFR, the work that you put in off camera, which I think I didn't really realize that until I got to work with you in the aspect that we did. That just there's so much more that you need to do to be successful, not on camera, which I think it goes into kind of the theme of what we've just been talking about. But I think people really need to understand that it's not you just jumping out there with a microphone and talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, well, thank you for recognizing that. I really appreciate it. That's a big compliment because I do I put in a lot of hours to make sure that I'm ready and to make sure that it can come across as naturally as possible. And maybe that seems kind of backwards that you work very hard to look natural and to look, make it
That's
look
what it
easy.
takes, though. That's what it takes.
Yeah, yeah. And I care a lot about it. And so I want to get that stat right. I want to tell your story. And, as we know, contestants and rodeo cowboys, they're not always the chattiest on camera. So if I can help you tell your story by just knowing something about you, that's what I really care about. And that's what I really want to make sure that I help these contestants portray, because that's at the end of the day what people remember. They don't remember the stats. I'm a stat junkie. I love it. But at the end of the day, I might memorize a stat because it's tied to a story. I always remember Ryland Geyer when he won the bronc riding, would have been, I guess, quite a few years ago now, but he come back, from a broken leg the year before, and then he 40%ed him all season long. He almost qualified for the NFR just rodeoing in Canada, and then walked away with the Canadian title. But I remembered that because it was a comeback story. It was a story that I could emotionally attach to. So that's always a big goal of mine and a driving force behind getting all these stats together to help paint the picture of the finals that was, the rodeo that was. And those are the things that people attach to at the end of the day. And I want to help contestants get that fan base by telling that story.
Well, and having that information and knowing that story you want to tell can help you in those situations when you're doing a sideline interview when they're kind of not giving you much. You kind of have to dig deep to drive the bus a little bit. But also then it could kind of, when it goes good, it's a nice, easy flow, which I think, again, is something that is overlooked. It's like you have done the work so that maybe when they're not giving you what you need, you can kind of pick up the slack a little bit and give them a little more.
Yeah, sometimes we do a fill in the blank question of like, I'll tell the first half. Come on, you got the second half.
You got this. Yeah, it's like fishing. It's like fishing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on to the next piece here, I want to. We've kind of touched a bit on it, and we've really kind of hammered on it a little bit, I guess. But what would be say I'm a young person coming to you looking for advice to get into broadcast, especially in the rodeo side of things. What's the main piece of advice you're giving me as I head into my budding broadcast career?
I think it goes back to what you and I were talking about before, and what you and I both strive to do is do the work, and don't be afraid to do any piece of that work. Write, shoot video, edit. Don't be afraid to be behind the camera just as much as you want to be in front of the camera, because it's going to help you so much. And I think to look outside of what you can learn in our sport. Of course, you've got to have the rodeo knowledge. That's a huge, huge part of it. But don't go to school for ag communications. That's, that was good enough before. That was going to teach you enough. But the ag side, pursue this world. You've got to really focus on the broadcast side of it so that you can be polished. You can, understand how a show flows. So go to school for broadcasting. Even better, go to school for sports broadcasting, because there is a difference between news broadcasting and sports broadcasting. That's something that I really had to learn. So, put in the work, get that structure outside of the rodeo world. And, just because you can speak doesn't mean you can broadcast, right? So get that structure as far as an education in broadcasting or sports broadcasting, and then just put the work in before you ever expect to be able to be on camera. And then you can also make opportunities for yourself. I was speaking with a young broadcaster the other day, and I said, look at, people like Cassie Hossauer with Lipstick and Cowboy Boots. She made opportunities for herself. She created her own platform where she would do like her Monday morning minutes, and she would go to events and, maybe not be hired to be there, but go there and do those interviews and create that content. There's nothing that is stopping you from getting your reps in.
And people will welcome you.
Yourself.
Events will welcome you because they want more coverage for them means
Exactly.
it's better, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to open the door for yourself in that way, by creating opportunities for yourself. There's no one that is stopping you from broadcasting except yourself. You have a phone, you can broadcast because you can do those Monday morning minutes, or you can get a media card and be at events and do some interviews. So I think that just goes back to being willing to put the work in and being willing to do whatever you have to do to, get to where you want to be.
So one last thing off the board on the broadcast side of things, who are some broadcasters or news people, or again, sports even, who you look up to or kind of who you draw influence from outside of the rodeo world?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Bad. Rodeo is my sport. And so I'm probably too focused on it sometimes, where I would benefit a lot from looking outside. But I do, a lot of the producers are not at the Cowboy Channel. They're not rodeo people, or else they're like super fans of other sports outside of rodeo. So lots of times if I'm feeling like I'm in a rut or feeling like I'm having trouble, I always go ask them like, hey, who's a really good sports broadcaster? And so I'll Google or YouTube videos of them for a while. And but I just I try just here and there to think like, okay, what are people doing that I'm not, or watch a video and I think, okay, how did they transition from A to B? How did they ask that question? Because there's lots of questions that they may be asking that could totally, reformat a little bit and work for rodeo. So I need to do it more. So that's a perfect reminder, Wacey, that I need to work harder.
That's your challenge for the rest of the year into 2024.
Yes. So. Yes. So bug me again at the end of the year, and I will tell you who I'm watching a lot.
I will. So moving on, we just spent the week in Red Deer at CFR 49. It was a lot of fun for me getting to work with you guys, like I said before, in the Cowboy Channel crew, and you guys were a huge help to me as a social media manager. Getting buy-in from people around you is like the biggest thing. So I was really thankful for that. But I just wanted to kind of ask you about some of your favorite moments, kind of in and out of the arena. Some of the, like, obviously getting to work with Barb and Dave again probably was a fun one. But yeah, just kind of go into what was fun about being at CFR 49 in Red Deer.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for their kindness. I felt so special getting to come back to CFR because I haven't been back in, I think, 4 years now. And so to get to come back and I felt so loved by everybody, and, all the reunions I got to have. And, I felt so much love from my people that I hadn't had a chance to see in so long. So I want to say thank you to everyone for that. That was definitely, the overarching highlight for me. It was amazing to be back. And I hope that I get to come back year after year because I miss CFR so much. I miss Canadian rodeo. I really hope that we can keep growing to where I can come up to some Canadian rodeos. And so that was definitely a highlight for me. And then just the stories again, how can you not love Edgar Durazo? Because he's just so happy. He takes forever to get to the interview spot because he's got to hug everybody all the way there. Yeah. I'm waving him in, and then I get a hug at the start of the interview too, and at the end. And so it was so cool to see, because the last time I broadcast the CFR, he'd won a Canadian title. So to come back and have him win again, and just see someone that is, he's won a lot, and he's so thankful for every opportunity, for every single thing he wins. So he's always just a highlight for me. Taylor Manning winning those back-to-back-to-back go-rounds, that was really cool, especially after knocking a barrel in the first, or 2 barrels in the first round. That was really awesome with her. She makes me laugh because Taylor does not love to do interviews. She doesn't
She's very
speak a
shy.
whole lot.
Yeah.
She kind of, lets her riding speak for herself. And I laughed that first go round that she won. She was up on the victory lap horse waiting to go. And I made eye contact with her and waved at her, all excited. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, and I thought, yep, she does not want to have to do this interview.
Oh,
but
gosh.
She does a great job. I told her after the interview, you need to give yourself more credit because you're awesome. You're so happy. You're so sincere. So it's good to see her again. And, I feel like I've grown up with her because I've seen her since she was 13 years old. And so that was really, really cool to get to see her. I love all the emotion, Brady Trine and Calgary Smith, they choked up a little bit in their last interview, or I guess their second last interview with me right after they'd won that final round. And you could tell it was so special to them, and to see them not just win, but just dominate.
Yeah. You don't see that often.
Really cool. Yeah. That was some of the best team roping I think we've ever seen at the CFR.
And it's great.
Yeah. There's so many stories. I feel like it was so dramatic this year at the CFR, Zeke bucking off in round 1. Oh my gosh. Like that was huge.
That was like shook the world. Everybody it was like you could hear a pin drop in the arena when he bucked off. It's like, what? This has not happened to this guy.
Oh, I gasped when he came off. It shocked me. You just don't expect that at all. So it was so cool to see, all of these stories unfold as they always do. But this year just felt extra dramatic in the best way. So
there's something about it too. You could tell Red Deer was buzzing. The crowds were great all the way from Wednesday up until Sunday. It was packed in there, and just the quality of competition I found was as good as it's ever been at the CFR.
I agree. It was so good. So much fun to watch it all unfold. And I'm just, kudos to Red Deer for all that they did the past few years, because they've really built it up. They've really, been about making the event better and better and better. And, I saw a big difference from the last time I was there to this time. And so we definitely have to commend them for a job well done.
Well, and speaking of that was one thing I wanted to ask you is what kind of differences did you notice, and what's changed since your previous CFRs to coming back to it this year?
I think it was kind of just what you said. The crowds, they were awesome. You could tell they'd kind of gotten in the swing of things in Red Deer. And I think anytime you move an event, especially one that's been in the same place for a long time, it takes a few years to really gain some momentum and really get people in the swing of things. So I just felt like overall, it was the same wonderful rodeo, wonderful experience, except it was elevated. Just like we talked about in the arena, it felt like more drama there. I felt like the crowds were bigger. The buzz was louder. It just felt like a more elevated CFR this year. And so it was really cool to be a part of. I know you could see, even though it was the last year for Red Deer, they still had so much care for it. And I think that really showed in the turnout and the crowd excitement and the crowd engagement. And I want to give a shout out to Nikki Flundra. This year, Nikki always
nailed it. She nailed it this year.
Just night after night, I was sitting there wiping tears. And, it was so cool. And I just think this year, I felt so patriotic about my country. And a lot of that was to do with the stories that Nikki was crafting for the opening. And, Brett Gardner, when we did that opening with all 12 of the NFR qualifiers in the arena, and that the Canadian flag slowly dropped, and, just some of the lines that Brett was, it was so good. Yes, it gave me chills, and I'm wiping up tears and trying to keep from sobbing in the back. And so big shout out to Nikki, because she's always amazing, but this year it just was a whole other level.
Yeah, it seemed like the production team that they assembled at Westerner and in Red Deer, they just always were finding ways to move the needle and push it to become better than even just the night before, and better than in years past, which I want to give them a pat on the back just for what they've done over the few years. And it felt like this year, it didn't feel like a goodbye to Red Deer. It felt like a celebration of what the CFR had become in Red Deer. Like it would have been easy for them to like, oh, it's our last CFR, like see you later.
Yeah.
Like it was less of like a happy trails and more of like, hey, we were here in Red Deer and like we made some freaking noise throughout the 5 years that it was the CFR was in town.
I agree. It was definitely bittersweet, but it, like you said, it was also a celebration of
Mm-hmm.
like, look at what we did the last
Yeah.
5 years. So it was awesome.
Oh yeah. So moving on to CFR 50, the announcement happened shortly before CFR 49. Just going back to Edmonton, which is a big deal in its own right. Edmonton's excited. I know a lot of people are excited to see it go back to Edmonton. What does that mean for the CFR, for rodeo in Canada, just kind of having the biggest event in a kind of a bigger center, bigger city type thing?
I'm excited about it because of the city's support of it. I'm sure you
Mm-hmm.
remember, when we were kids going to the CFR, if you were in the rest of Edmonton, you might not know that a rodeo
Mm-hmm.
was on. And, I think a lot of that came from Jillian Grant when she started working for the city of Edmonton and started doing activations. And, this is a lot of years ago now, but
Mm-hmm.
she started doing activations in town where they had the chili cook-off and they had the wear your jeans to work day and all of that. So I'm really excited that now that it's coming back to Edmonton, the city has truly embraced it. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like already. And, Explore Edmonton has seen the value of this event. And so I'm excited to see it become not just an event that is, located in one spot, but something that spans the whole city. You think about like the Calgary Stampede. How many lawyers do you see walking
Oh,
around
it's
in plaid
everyone.
shirts, jeans, and boots, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think we can kind of use that model a little bit and
Yeah.
bring it to Edmonton. So
Yeah,
I'm excited about that.
it's a celebration. That's one thing I've always fascinated. Like I lived in downtown Calgary for 6 years, 7 years, and that was one thing that always fascinated me with the buy-in from the whole city. It was like, hey, like, we're celebrating the Western lifestyle, and I'm excited to see what Edmonton can do with that on their side.
I agree. I think it'll look a little different. But because Calgary Stampede has such an identity. So I'm
Mm-hmm,
excited
mm-hmm.
to see what the CFR's identity is
Yeah,
going to be. And just that facility too, it's huge. It's a big bad
gorgeous
beast. It's
building. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So it's going to be really cool from a broadcast perspective. I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to have a really sharp look to it. And
mm-hmm,
then even just hearing some of the plans in place as far as, the activations outside the building, with it being earlier too, you can do more outside events.
100%.
So, yeah, I think it's just going to grow and grow. And I feel like it's going to modernize a little bit
Mm-hmm.
there, and not in a bad way. I think it's just going to have more activations. It's still going to be, the same core values that we know and love,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to have a little bit of an edgier modern feel.
Yeah, so it's almost like a step forward for it, where it's like it's not forgetting where it came from or what it's been to that point, but we're moving to a new chapter of like, hey, that's where we're moving into the future of what the CFR can be. Especially, it's kind of like poetic in the fact that it's the 50th CFR going to be back in Edmonton.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a big deal. I know that the city is going to, show up and show out because it's the 50th anniversary, because they're so honored to have it back. And so I'm excited to see what the plans are. I know you'll be hearing from me. I'll be wanting some insider
Oh,
info.
oh, hell yeah. So another little event that's coming up in a few weeks, Wrangler NFR in Vegas. Yeah,
Little
little
event.
tiny event, no big deal.
Yeah.
It's happening. But yeah, we kind of touched on we have 12 Canadians making their way down this year, and I think a really strong group of competitors and some people in some new events with Bo Cooper in the tie down roping and Stephen Collin going down in the steer wrestling. What can we expect out of our Canadian qualifiers as we head into the NFR, and who are some to watch, and what are some predictions you might have?
Well, I am so proud of anything to do with Canada, whether it be, our rodeos receiving awards, our stock, and especially our contestants. So I am so excited to have 12 contestants to cheer for this year, plus Tyler Craft as the pickup man as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have 13, great Canadians there this year at the NFR. And, we've got a good mix too. You look at, Oren Larson, he's been there so many times, and he's always just a household name, whether you're north or south of the border, always a contender. And I know it was tough on him injuring his hand last year. So it'll be really exciting to see him back. He looks like he's feeling really good. Exciting to have him there. And then you've got Zeke, the king. I feel like I've said it a few times at CFR, all hail the king.
Yeah.
He is just amazing. But then you've got guys there for the first time. Stephen Culling had an amazing year this year, and that guy is so calm and cool. So I'm excited to see him put together 10 really good days. And Bo Cooper, I was so proud to watch him this year because Bo has put in the work. And as you know, he's had some ups and downs. He's had some controversy, and he just prevailed as a roper and as a person through all of that. So I am, one of the biggest Bo Cooper fans out there. And, I'm a little biased in the tie-up. I just think Bo's going to be so good. He's ready. He's earned it. It's going to be awesome. So, everybody, they're all so different. They all have, a different feel to them. They all have different familiarity with the NFR, but just to have 13 Canadians there, I think really shows how strong rodeo in Canada is and how important it is too. And that's something that I'm definitely proud to be a part of.
Well, and it's going to be super exciting down there in Vegas this year. My one to watch is Jared Parsonage in the bull riding. He went down there last year by himself in the bull riding, which I think for those guys, you get to know everybody. You're going down the road, going to those big events, but you're kind of by yourself in your event. You're kind of a bit isolated. And I think going down with Jordan Hansen, which is his best friend, traveling partner, I think you're going to see some big things out of Jared in Vegas this year. Those
two were so fun to watch too, because they're so different to me, but they're just, you could tell they're just the best of friends. And, they have totally different riding styles. And they're both pretty relaxed. Their personalities are pretty close to the same. But and it's just, when we think about how tough bull riding is, what most ride percentages are like 30 to 40%, and you're elite in this sport. So it's pretty cool to see two Canadians that are able to make it, multiple times in the bull riding, because we know that's an event that doesn't go your way more times than not. So I'm excited for them too.
One thing as well is we got a huge contingent of Canadian stock heading down. I think the Stampede has 45 head of horses heading down, or that might have been the CFR. Anyways, there's a huge amount of bucking stock heading down, which is a kind of a testament to where rodeo is in Canada.
Yeah, I think so too. And I feel like before I started heading down to the States a lot, I remember when I was Miss Rodeo Canada and I got to go to the States to a lot of rodeos, I realized how spoiled we are in Canada with our bucking stock, because the horses are big, they're showy, and they are amazing equine athletes. And our bulls are the same too. And so it's really cool to see them continue to be recognized, because they deserve it. I think Canada, I'd like to know the numbers on like per populace, per
capita.
Yeah, exactly. On, how many of our animals make it to the big show compared to how many are in the US too. Cause I feel like, per capita, we're pretty darn strong. We're small, but we're pretty mighty down there. So it's exciting. There's going to be a lot of people and a lot of animals to cheer for.
So one last thing before we wrap up here, what's Vegas look like for you? What do you got on the go? Where can people find you on the Cowboy Channel?
It's going to be hectic as per usual. We're still solidifying what everybody's doing. And I'm excited to see, hopefully this week kind of see some of those plans come together. But, I'm so excited to be part of our team and to be back there again. Last year was very busy, but I wouldn't have changed it. I was so tired. I was so sick by the end. I went and got some IVs too, just to survive the week, because I was on the tailgate show for 2.5 hours, and then we'd go watch the rodeo at the South Point and then do our wrap-up show once contestants started to come to the South Point for the buckle ceremony. So I know no matter what I'm doing there, it's going to be busy. It's going to be crazy, but I'm just I'm so honored to be a part of it. And having been on the road for the last couple of years, it's been really exciting to really get to know these contestants and some of their stories. And, you know, like I look at Hayes Waite. I just met him at Ellensburg this year, and he was competing with his jaw wired shut. He had just broke his jaw a few days before Ellensburg, and then he went and won a ton of money there. And when I interviewed him, it was so cool. You know, he's sitting there trying to just get enough air in because his teeth are wired shut.
Mm-hmm.
And I, at that point, I think he was sitting 15th or 16th in the world and just went on an absolute tear. And I loved, he said, I'm going. I've just decided I'm getting to the NFR. And so I'm excited to just kind of continue those stories into the NFR. And, you know, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm excited to be a part of it, be a part of this team, and just continue to tell these stories, because I'm in, I'm hooked. I'm huge fans of these competitors. And I just, no matter what at the NFR, amazing stories always come to light, whether it's the underdog that battled from 15-1, or, you know, somebody that just absolutely dominated all the way through, or round 10 where the perfect storm of scenarios had to happen. And as you know, more times than not, it does.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, that's the thing I'm most excited for, and just to be there and tell these stories.
And we're excited to check it out, and we're super proud to have you representing us at Canadian Rodeo and Canadians as a whole down there. And thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today. It's been super fun. It's something new I'm trying for us up here. So you were like I said in the start of the show, you're the perfect first guest for me to have on. And yeah, thanks for the time.
Hey, well, I'm excited to be a part of it. You're doing such a great job for Canadian Rodeo. I'm so excited that they hired you to be a part of it, because you truly are taking it to the next level and putting it, or giving it, the spotlight that it deserves. So great job for everything that you're doing. And I'm just happy to help out where I can.
Well, thanks, Katy. And you can follow along with Katy at the Cowboy Channel on Facebook, Instagram, social media at the Cowboy Channel, and at KT Rodeo is your Instagram handle. And you can keep up with what's going on in Pro Rodeo at the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association on Facebook, and Pro Rodeo Canada Official on Instagram, where we'll be keeping you updated on what's happening at the NFR and everything beyond. And thanks again to Katy Lucas. We will catch you next time. All right. Thanks again to Katy Lucas for joining us and being our first ever guest on the Short Round podcast. Like I talked about at the top of the show, the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals are in Regina next week from November 22nd to 25th. And it features the top 12 contestants from the Maple Leaf Circuit standings, with the overall tour champion and the finals champion heading to the NFR Open next July. And to preview the action coming to your way next week, I thought no better person to bring on than professional rodeo announcer and voice of the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals, Robert Schmidt. Robert, welcome to the Short Round.
Glad to be here, Wacey. I'm looking forward to previewing this rodeo.
Yeah. Well, so before we get into the nitty gritty about what to expect and who's going to be there and all that fun stuff, it's kind of a big deal. It's your first year announcing the circuit finals. As both Sasky boys, we spent a lot of time in the Brand Center over the years at the CCA finals, competing and being around friends and family. So what's it mean to be announcing this finals for the first time in a building that means so much to you?
I'm not sure if I've ever been more excited to announce a rodeo than coming into next week with the circuit finals. I made a Facebook post about it earlier. That was one of the first rodeos that I watched as a young kid. Graham Stewart and I won a high school title in that building way back in 2002, and now some of those guys are still competing, and I'm going to get to call their rides. So I'm super pumped to make my way into the Brand Center.
Man, I for one am super stoked for you. It's well deserved, and you had a great year on the trail on your end so far. So it's going to be awesome to hear you in Regina next week. So let's get to it. We got the top 12, like I said, in the Maple Leaf Circuit standings coming to Regina next week. Who are some of the key players to watch for and to get excited about?
Well, I mean, if we want to just roll through it event by event, I think I'm going to kick it off in the ladies barrel racing. They were the first event to kick off the CFR. I'm sure they'll be first on the list inside the Brand Center as well. And I think it's going to be a race of the rookies in there. The vets are there, but the rookies, they brought it at the CFR. And I'm going to start it off with a Saskatchewan girl from Mancota, Carly Cowie. She won the last round of the CFR. she had a huge finals there and took home the average title. And I think she's just going to carry that momentum into the 4 go-arounds inside Regina. So, yeah.
My one to watch is going to be Taylor Manning after smoking 3 round winning runs at CFR Red Deer. I feel like she just does so well in those indoor pens. So
the one barrel cost her in the end.
I know, man. So it'll be good watching. So who do we got next? Bareback riding?
Bareback riding, boy, you guys were hard enough on them in Red Deer, weren't they? But
man,
we got a full list of contenders, and Ty Tipatat's coming back to Regina, hometown boy. Let's just call it a hometown show for Ty, and there's no greater pressure, but there's no better feeling than when you light it up in front of your hometown crowd. And I'm looking forward to watching Ty lay back on a few bareback horses inside that arena. As well, how do you count out guys like Clint Lay and the veteran
champ?
Oh man, he is unbelievable. 4-time Canadian champ.
Well, and Ben, watching him like healthy, like he is like something else, dude. Like he was on fire in Red Deer and like put together like just with ease. So it's fun to see him back at 100%.
I rewatched round 6 last night and just Clint Lay on that Agent Link source of Calgary's just dominated him right from the start to the finish and put the exclamation point on it, as Dave and Dustin said, solidified it, right? So that's awesome for him.
Right on. Moving on to the steer wrestling. Is that what you got next? Are we going to CFR?
Sure. I can find that page here. The big boys. You know what? I'm a pretty big fan of Ty Miller. That guy. Dude, on the gray horse, and I'm a fan of the gray horse, and I think that coming in as the average champ in the CFR, again, just keep going, keep that ball rolling, and Ty's going to do that, and he's feeling good. There's some guys that are beat up, guys like Chance Butterfield and company. So let's look for Ty Miller inside the brand. I know what you're going to pick. You're going to pick the big gun, right?
Well, you know what? Okay, another guy that I might look to do well is Ryan Schuckberg.
Yes,
he kind of had some success in Red Deer, and he's one of those guys. I think once they get hot, they can kind of roll that momentum forward, which is really interesting to see how these guys carry into the next event post CFR. I know, like for some guys, it's run another 6 under me or another 6 runs, or it's like some guys need that rest to heal up, like maybe a Chance Butterfield or somebody. But
right,
it'll be exciting to see.
A fun fact about Schuckberg. I remember the first time I ever saw him was in the CCA finals in Swift Current, and Doug nudged me in the announcers booth. He said, "You watch this kid right here. He's going to be somebody to watch in the next few years." And once again, Doug Young was right with the call. Schuckberg made it.
Doug's got all the predictions down. So that'll take us to the Saddle Bronc or the Team Roping. What is next?
We can go wherever you want. The Team Roping.
Let's go Team Roping. Yeah, this is your wheelhouse, your bread and butter.
This is my wheelhouse, and I'm not going to lie. The Team Roping is going to be wide open. There's some new partnerships that we're going to see. There's guys that rope together at the CFR that are wheeling with new partners in the Brant Center. So, and the Team Roping always is impressive at the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals. That's where the Canadian record is, 3.3. How fast is it going to be? I look at all of these guys. There's a lot of young guys, and I think that's myself starting to show my age as well. So I'm going to go with Grady Quam and Devin Wigmeyer. They're coming in as the most money won throughout the tour, and Grady Quam and Devin, just 2 guys that I know pretty well personally, and I'm rooting for Grady Quam this week.
Makes some stuff happen. I'm going to put my money down on T. McLeod and Brady Chappell. They cooled off a little bit at the end of the CFR, but a couple of hometown guys, I think that they're going to find their mojo again and shoot the lights. I know Brady Chappell, like, ropes tougher than anybody in the Brand Center. I don't like, you just like, we'll go back and watch old titles exactly.
As Brady won in the Brand Center.
Yeah. So, right? Man, so when those guys get rolling, they're tough to beat. So the Team Roping will definitely be exciting.
It is definitely a contingency of young guys in the Team Roping. There's a lot.
Cool. It's kind of cool to see that changing of the guard. Hey, like even I was talking to Rolly McFadden at the CFR, and then he was like mentioning how he was getting some of the young guys were busting him up a bit, and then he's like, I'm not even that old. Like I'm 30, whatever he is, and it's like, yeah, it's just that's the way these things go down, man. It's crazy.
We can say old Roland is rolling to the hip now.
Okay, so let's go into the saddle bronc riding. It's just like it may not have all the heavy hitters that we saw at CFR, but I mean, still a stacked list of saddle bronc riders heading into Regina.
It is a stacked list of saddle bronc riders, and I think I'm going to go with the guy that has the most money won on the year. I still sometimes question how he wasn't in contention more for an NFR qualification, and that is Lucas Matza. That's maybe I have to pick him now because his mailing address is the same as mine, and
Yeah,
he's joined the club here in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. But man, that guy rides well.
dude, and I think he's one of those guys that's just like scratching the surface. Like he rode so good at the CFR and like just has so much potential to be like right up there with the top guys in the world. So yeah, hoping he can get rolling and find his way not only back to the CFR but into Vegas next year. For me, it's going to be Tyrell Roberts to watch.
Yeah,
That's another one of those young guys that like he has so much talent and is figuring it out. And if you give him the right horse, he can make some snappy bronc rides. So
absolutely.
it's gonna be fun in the saddle bronc riding, and then that'll take us to the tie down roping.
The tie down roping. You know who I was going to pick right off the hop is I was going to pick Eric DeBlanco. I'm a
Mm.
big strong guy myself, and that guy moves lightning fast. He can blow through a calf on the ground, but that hamstring injury or that nagging leg injury
Mm.
that is coming at him, as we'll see how that plays out. So, I mean, you can never count out Logan Bird, Kyle Lucas, of course, but once again, I mean, I guess I got to root for the Sasky boy inside of the Brant Center, Jesse Popesco. Two-event guy, phenom, and how fast can he be at any given time?
Got to give the home court advantage. I think I might be cheating a bit here, but Kyle Lucas is the guy. I think
Yeah,
he's one of those guys. Like he didn't have a great CFR, but I think it was just a couple missteps that like took him out of contention. So I think he's gonna get that dialed in heading into Regina. It's gonna be a good week for him. So
Kyle was my
second,
pick. Kyle was my
Kyle.
pick.
Kyle's a good pick, man.
Yeah.
He got that guy's quick. Now we got the ladies breakaway roping. Again, a solid contingent of gals here, like pretty much all your heavy hitters from CFR.
Right. And all year long, been a fan of her roping, and coming from a rodeo family, and we watched her brother kill it in the bull riding as well, and that's Shea Beaver, Claire's home, the champ. So
Yeah.
yeah, unbelievable roper
She's
right
got
there.
ice in her veins, man. That girl, like, she was super impressive. I didn't realize how good she was until seeing her at CFR last week, man. She went up there with like top in the world. Michaela Bolgerly was there and the best girls in Canada and shot the lights up. So I think she
Unfazed. That's I always
yeah,
say it, like unfazed. It doesn't matter what's in front of
yeah.
her. She just goes and makes her run, and I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Must get it from her brother. All right. And last but not least, the bull riding, the Toro
Your
Locos.
specialty right here, Wacey.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
man.
let you go first.
Oh, dude. I don't know. Some of these guys are a little banged up. But again, I'm gonna give some go home court advantage and get Chance Switzer. He's he's another one of them guys, kind of like Lucas Moxa, has got so much talent and just kind of scratching the surface on what he can do at this level. We saw him at a PBR event in Saskatoon a few weeks ago, make some killer bull rides. And I think if he can just find a way to stay 100% healthy or like relatively healthy for a season and get in a groove, like Chance is tough to beat. We saw it at the amateur level, like for a few years in the CCA, you couldn't touch him. So I think it's only a matter of time before he starts to find his way at the top level.
I agree. I agree. Chance has just missed the CFR the last couple of years after making the jump to the CPRA, and like you said, we saw him make some big time bull rides in Saskatoon. I watched it again in Yorkton. He followed it up. So I think he's on a bit of a heater, and I think he's going to be extra motivated inside that brand center. I mean, he wants to get to the NFR Open, see where that takes him, and the doors are opening up. And I know a lot of other people in the bull riding world have been talking about Chance the last little while. A guy that I've always been a fan of, Jacob Gardner, Fort St. John,
Dude,
BC,
yeah.
the king of the Peace Country, and if they go into his hand, it's for sure a done deal.
Yeah, and he just like he takes the fight to him all the time. Like no matter what, like if he's overmatched or like in a bad position. Like he just finds a way to like keep fighting and scratching and clawing. And I like Jake's so impressive that way. So he's gonna be tough to beat. You mentioned the NFR Open. Talk a bit about like has some big implications, like especially for some of these guys, maybe like a Clint Lay or one of those people who are gonna make a push for Vegas next year. Like there's some big time money available at the NFR Open.
Well, I think that is the key, and I think that is it can be it's life changing money for those guys to get down there and ride for that. I'm not even sure what the prize money is off the top of my head. Is $100,000?
I think it's I didn't do my homework on that one, but it's a ton. It's a ton.
I just know that if you can get there, and what a way to get there when you qualify in November and it's not till July and can set your entire season up. And I think back to guys, the veterans, the KG veterans like Scott Gunther and guys like Dakota Butter that are maybe at the rough stock end of the arena. There's an old wily veteran in the bull riding world, but I mean, if he gets himself to a place like the circuit finals, it could set up his entire year. I mean, so I think it is an opportunity. So not only for those old guys, but for guys like Chance Spitzer. See where the road takes you.
Yeah, well, it's sure to be an awesome week in Regina. I know it's an exciting time with Canadian Western Exhibition on and a busy time in Regina. It's going to be a busy one for you. And we appreciate you taking the time to give us a quick little breakdown before we head into the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals.
I appreciate you having me. It's been a blast, Wacey.
Right on. Well, that's going to do it for the first episode here of the Short Round Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. You can catch all of the action from the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals on the Cowboy Channel Plus app. We'll be releasing any more info. It's going to be end up on the actual Cowboy Channel, so stay tuned to that. And follow along as we move through the NFR into the winter on the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association Facebook page and our Instagram at Pro Rodeo Canada Official. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson, and we will catch you down the trail.